on this meeting.
He's here.
He's here. Okay. So I had, when the fire came about in August, the blessings of Akua, and I know these things that have moved upon me can be only from Heavenly Father. I have prayed for many years and asked him, use me, O Lord, as you will, to do your work as you please and not I. We have with us that Akua has blessed us with this individual that has come into my heart. And Ekalamai, because I'm a little softy. I try to be a cool auntie, but sometimes manawahin doesn't work. He has brought a lot of knowledge and wisdom, and he wanted to make contact with me at that time of the fire. But I was so in focus with His Majesty and the healing of our people at that time. I have lost a lot of families, uncles, aunties, and tutus. And so with that, would you like me to introduce Your Highness?
No, I will do that in a moment, but thank you for your manao.
Very much.
I want to follow up what Auntie Victoria said. My mother, God bless her soul, and I'm sure all of you will resonate to this. She would say often, money does not unite us. Leadership of service, vision, wisdom, courage, and selfishness, and love does. And that's the one thing that unites a people, is those things I just mentioned: vision, courage, wisdom, selfishness, and the will to serve. And that is my manolo, is to serve the people, not them, me, but I, them. And the person who actually put me on this road, I mean, other than my parents or my family, was Lanny. Lanny was always the voice behind everything, always telling me what I do wrong. He was good at telling me what I do wrong, often what I do wrong. And when he does say something nice, I try, that's the time for celebration. But overall, that's his job, is to keep me in place and keep me in check and balance, because I believe we should all be accountable. There's no one person is above any other person. And as I often say, we must live in harmony with nature, the natural world, and the human family. And that is very important. So the individual that I would like to bring on is Michael Proper. I spoke to him the other day, and I asked him to give a presentation, to be here. And I would not invite him if I was not impressed by his spirit, not by what he said, but by his spirit of law, his kindness, and his willing to serve the people. Most importantly, his love for God and family. He is from New Zealand. His family, he's an indigenous man like myself, humble. And before I bring him on, we have here Charles. Charles is also a graduate of Kamehameha High School. His family have been entrepreneurs. Another man who loves to serve the people, who believes in the greater good, and is always there when need be. And so thank you, Charles, for being here. I will turn the time over to Michael. And Michael will discuss and share with us some of the things he does. But before he does that, I would like him to give a brief presentation on his background and his education. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you for the opportunity to be here. If I could be afforded the ability to share my screen, I can jump into it. And
absolutely. I will do that in 2 seconds. Share screen. Got it. I'm learning this stuff. I did the first time, right? Share screen. No. Okay. Are you there?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Actually, I can't.
Yeah, let me do it again. Hold on.
Okay.
I hope I'm a better king than I am a sharer.
We'll show you some technologies that will simplify this greatly.
Did I do it right?
No, you shared your screen, but that's okay.
I need to get out of my screen.
Technology, a wonderful thing.
Sorry, guys, this is me showing my education. Okay. Not sharing.
Down at the bottom.
Hello, Your Majesty. This is Lamaku speaking. I don't mean to interrupt you here, but while that's going on, may I introduce another guest who's here, who is a nomination to the board of the House of Nobles?
Hold on a second, please. Hold on. Did I get it right this time?
Yes, you did.
Okay. Let Michael continue his presentation first, please, and then we'll go ahead with your nomination. Thank you, Lamaku. Michael, please.
So as a brief,
There's 2 screens up.
you got,
Two screens are out. How do I get rid of the other one?
I'm on it. I'm on it now. I'm on mute
Hold on.
because it's ticky.
Okay. Guys, I'm sorry. This thing is not doing what I need to end this.
there you go. So while he's doing that, I'll give you a brief history of myself. 48 years old and spent 26 years of my life focused on building businesses in the tech in the technology world, but primarily focused on centralized systems and then decentralized systems. And the way that I got into that was I was emancipated from the state of California from the foster care system in the LA area, which I kind of started at 9 years old and was raised by a wonderful family. He was actually an LA County Sheriff officer that got his license to take me. Notice the word license, notice the word emancipation. I asked my social worker, he already had his own six kids, and so he took me as his 7th. And after the second murder on campus at high school at Palmdale High in LA County, I asked my social worker if I had to stay there. And he said, no, you can basically leave the system and the state won't provide any kind of services for you. But you have to sign this document and then you won't get any money for your foster family, so you'll be on your own. So I did that and I went to Utah. I hitched a ride to Utah, and I've been building business there ever since. The businesses that you'll see in the bottom left are companies that are focused on decentralized technology. They're always starting with a term called clear. And there's a reason for all of it.
Honey.
Say again?
No, ikaw.
Say again?
I think we need the sharing screen. Ekalamai. The sharing screen, is that yours, Michael?
No, that's His Majesty's.
Okay.
Guys, I'm technically challenged. Honestly, I'm Googling for answers. I'll get it clear in a minute.
This
Sorry.
is Emmeline and Rhett. Would you like me to walk you through the steps?
Yeah, I can.
Yes.
Okay, at the bottom is a share screen button. You need
So you have
to
move your
remove,
mouse down and it'll pull up once you get your mouse down there.
Or when you share, it actually turns into a bar, and then you have a red button that says stop share.
stop sharing. Yeah.
Did I do it right?
Michael, is this what your screen looks like? The 3 little boxes?
That's Michael.
Right now, yes.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you, Emily and Rhett. Go ahead, please,
Perfect.
Michael.
Perfect. So, make a long story short, the reason that I've focused on technology throughout my life was a simple prayer when I was 16 years old after I arrived in Utah. I didn't know what the word technology meant. I called my foster father on a normal phone, not a cell phone, but a normal phone. This was like 1992, 93. And I said, I know what I'm supposed to do with my life and time, but I don't know what it is. And he really didn't know what technology was back then either. I knew that was the one word. And I really Had no clue. But make a long story short, 3 days later, he called me back and he said, this gentleman's leaving Xerox and he wants to start up a company and he's looking for an apprentice. And so my education is not that of the world, if you say, from a normal, system of schooling, but that of learning by asking questions and then learning the answers. I think in life, half of the equation is really to try and ask the right question.
You okay, babe?
And then you can get the answers. Getting some feedback somewhere.
Yes. Can all of you turn off your mic, please?
So with that, what you'll see is basically a lifetime's worth of work. Before this, I focused on centralized systems, starting a company named Direct Point. It actually focused on hardware, software, and services for a predictable monthly fee, primarily around the server, network, and PC layer. We didn't do mobile phones. We did everything but that. We sold the printer division to Hewlett Packard in 2008 and got out of the centralized side of businesses, primarily because we saw the architecture was actually flawed. Centrally supporting systems is just like putting data in a central location. It creates a target on it. It creates a risk on it. The model was inappropriate. In 2009, we focused on decentralized systems, primarily because blockchain was starting out, also known as Bitcoin. But to what we didn't understand was blockchain or the technology behind it, or even the names inside of the Bitcoin white paper, was a gentleman named Scott. And Scott had actually used this technology for genealogical purposes. Basically, it's a good timestamp, and then multiple different systems can validate that that happened. That's really all that it was. But when you look at 2008 or 2009, when this Bitcoin element came out, do you remember what happened? There was a crash. There was a crash of systems, primarily in the banking system, because they were doing fractional bank lending and the insurance organizations behind them, the math didn't add up and it all came down. Bitcoin was actually released as an alternative to the financial system because of lack of accountability and responsibility within the banking system. So what you see is in 2009, everything in the world that I'd worked on in technology shifted from centralization to decentralization. And at that time, we had history, we had built businesses that have taken off, hundreds of employees, even almost thousands, or 750 still today, just on the consumer side of it. Many businesses broke out. And when I left that business, which I had started, the first person to start it, many scratched their head and said, why would you leave such a wonderful business? The culture was good. The customers loved us. We managed services remotely for companies. And I can honestly tell you that we didn't have one lawsuit or issues with companies that would trust us with their IT. And I'm talking big organizations, from healthcare to states to counties to law enforcement systems, police stations, mortgage companies, title companies, manufacturers, doctors, OGBYN, family practitioners. We had thousands of them in all 50 states. Some of us can add up states today, and there's actually 53, and some of us will talk about questions around that. But when we understood the states, we also went international. So it was in many different countries as well. And so when we walked away, I literally just one day just said, this isn't right, and I'm going to focus on decentralized systems. And so what you see in front of you is a combination of those systems. On the bottom left, you see a group of companies. I'll go through what they are in a little while, but they basically only focus on decentralized systems. They start with Clear. They enable an ecosystem that is called the digital world. No one owns it. No one controls it. It is just technology that councils or governance systems can actually have service providers deliver some form of technology. Does that make sense? So instead of having individuals doing certain things, like for instance, we went to go get a vehicle registered this last week. Actually, it was just a safety. We took it to Toyota and we said, we just want you to rotate the tires and check the oil. And they said, oh, would you like us to do your state safety and emissions and all the other inspections so you can renew your tags? We said, yeah, that's fine. And then they said, well, do you have this piece of paper? Do you have this piece of paper? No. Well, you need to go get that piece of paper. So we went to go get the piece of paper, had to do it at the DMV within the state of Hawaii. And then we took it back over to them. And along the way, we called and says, can't you just look up the license plate or look up the VIN and see how that works? And the point being is we're having to do a lot of different manual things. We bring the paper back, then they can start the process. And in some parts of the world, that's all automated. In some parts of the world, it's not. What you see are different states, counties, and environments that basically have their own process and their own structures. Why? Because when the United States of America was founded, the authority was actually given to the counties to do these types of things. And then over time, the states actually start taking accountability for it. So as we go through these systems, what you're going to see is primarily this digital world in the middle of it, which is a group of technologies, 3 different open source technologies that are literally what we call living the law of consecration in software development, where no one owns it and no one controls it, but everyone can benefit from it. The 3 technologies that were basically duplicated and then given to the world, one is an operating system called Red Hat Enterprise Linux, which focuses on the back-end side of things. The second, and IBM bought that for $32 billion in cash to basically kill it. The second is an operating system called Android. Some of you are familiar with it. We basically built that in such a way that Google could be replaced or not placed. There was also a lawsuit, not just the state of Utah, but many other ecosystems that sued Google from trying to stop people from doing what we did right there out of Utah. And the third is an operating system in the financial ecosystem that will be a part of the future, but it is centralized. And we'll talk a lot about that. And that's similar to like what you would see with, if you're familiar with Ripple or XRP or Stellar or XLM, those types of technologies. They will, when you combine all of this into one ecosystem, you enable a world where different kingdoms, nations, communities, people, tribes can use this technology. And then up in the top right, we'll talk about this coalition. So basically, different decentralized companies that are service providers to a digital world that enables countries, principalities, kingdoms, nations, tongues, communities, tribes, providences, all to work together within what you'll see here in a second is a coalition. And the coalition isn't important for this conversation, but it's important for you to kind of see the future of it. So with that being said, what we're looking at is basically a group of different Clear companies: Clear Foundation, Clear Center, Clear Cellular, Clear United, Clear Homes, Clear Health, and Clear Energy. Some of these, like from here on, may be in the future. And there's a timeline. If you want to see this, it's clear.co.com, but I'll walk you through the important points. The net is they're focused on decentralized technologies. The core of it is actually phones. We had to get into the phone ecosystem to understand how to actually build these systems from the inside out. And then once we built them, then we could take it to other platforms such as Apple and Google, and then what we call a suffocation strategy where you pull everyone else into it. So that being said, the Clear companies are spanned across not just the United States, but India, Philippines, Canada, New Zealand. We had an office in Australia, Greece, as well as in Italy is where some of the interface stuff is done. And so you can learn a little bit about them, but they basically enable this ecosystem of what we call the digital world. It enables not just governance, but decentralized governance for all of humanity. And it does it what we call, it's a humanity-based operating system. Some of you may remember the days when you heard the word operating system, and it was usually for like a personal computer. And you saw a battle between IBM and Microsoft and others, Apple, to basically win the ecosystems of how we interfaced with technology, primarily at what we call a personal computer or a laptop, or then it turned into tablets, then into what we call access devices like phones. But this humanity operating system, if you will, is much different than any of the other operating systems that you would have seen. And I'll spend some time walking through how this actually benefits. The core of it is based upon human rights. the ability for us to be able to be individuals in our own realm. What I mean by that is the ability for us to actually govern ourselves. For instance, there's a lot of mothers and a lot of fathers on these calls. And I would say that just like in my upbringing as an individual that was a ward of the state of California, particularly growing up in the foster care system, and some of you may have kids that are taken from you or seen other kids that are taken from you, you may end up seeing different campaigns where the government may be able to raise your children better than you as a mother or father. And in some ways, it may feel like it just is wrong. No one's going to care about your children more than you would. Maybe you're not perfect. Maybe there's things that you need to improve. Maybe there's lessons you need to learn. It's just like what we talked about in our prior conversation. There's good and bad, and along this journey of life, we get to live and learn. And hopefully, the most valuable thing, our family, is something that is actually empowered by us as individuals by, I believe, one of the most important gifts we've been given, and that is a procreation and to create life. The ability to actually govern ourselves can be simplified with some of the steps that we'll go through, but the core of it is life, love, family, community, and choice. This is a declaration of unity that I would urge Your Majesty to drive the awareness for after you review it and you approve it. It's something that is a very important document. I believe it rivals the importance of the Declaration of Independence for the country of America. I also recognize that Hawaii is a very different country. The Hawaiian Kingdom is not America, and I'll go through a lot of my slides to help you as an outsider with a perspective of coming in, utilizing a simple model that you see here. And it's basically on one side, it's us using access devices to then connect to decentralized systems on the right side. So all of these different things that I just told you about are the core and the infrastructure to be able to make this model happen. This model has taken decades to build, literally decades. 17 years this ClearOS server software has been perfected over the years, only to take out Microsoft, and then only to be taken out by IBM for $32 billion in cash and then shelved. But it still lives, and it's given away to the masses. And when people understand that money doesn't drive everything, but the opportunity for people to be free and to choose, that's why we're here. And that's what should drive us in actions globally as humanity. I think a lot in the globe will actually agree with that. Those that may not, that may want control wouldn't align with that. We'll talk a little bit more about that, but I hope this chart makes sense. These are a lot of the details around some of the specifics, which we may refer back to for if the questions get very advanced. But basically, you can see in the middle here, this digital world goes through and checks a lot of boxes. And this is actually a third-party survey done out of a high-end university that focuses on this type of technology out of Australia. They actually did it for one of the countries that adopted this as a standard. Over the last about 16 months now, I've been in 21 countries, and 5 of them are rolling this technology out. The Hawaiian Kingdom was a very unique ecosystem because it was difficult to actually understand who are we talking about? Who's the decision makers? Who are the influencers? And as I started understanding more and more and more, I started understanding that there are a lot of individuals that stand up for a kingdom that is not the Hawaiian Kingdom, that is not the Hawaiian state, or I should say the state of Hawaii. And as we started understanding this, we started getting introduced to one party and one group, and then another group, maybe a little bit more organized, maybe a little bit more focused, then another group that was hyper-focused in one area, maybe it was legal, another one that was focused based upon, rallying different individuals and just aligning, some that would focus on, organizing on multiple different islands and hierarchical type structure, and some that would focus on lines, bloodlines. But the one thing that I identified that was unique or special about all of them was none of them really wanted to be in charge. The individuals were very humble people. They all had the spirit with them. It was easy to identify. And they did not want to control another. In most cases, 90+% of the cases, they saw themselves as servants to the people. And they saw themselves have a responsibility to stand up and say, enough is enough. What has happened in the past is wrong. And it's time to make it right. And as I see these different groups coming together, I see different terms, I see different definitions, but I really see, and one of the gentlemen said really well, he says, Mike, we are one. We may be in different canoes, but we are going in the same direction. And when I started understanding that, I started stepping back and thinking, they just need to see it. They need to see what technology can do. And when they understand it, everything will snap into place. All the confusion, the years of, I wouldn't say dysfunction, because there's not dysfunction here at all. There's alignment and love and aloha that will spread across the world like wildfire, like we've never understood. At least I've never understood. So with that being said, what we started putting together different goals. That's one of the reasons why over the years we've been very effective in what we've been able to accomplish, is we usually take very disparate teams, like we've got offices in 13 countries, and you take them and you focus them on one simple measurable goal for 1 year. You usually lock the goals in October, November, and then the calendar year, the next year, you have a weekly report out that says, these folks are focused on X to Y by when. So there's a report out. And so that's what you're seeing here is a simple shot at the dark at this. And by the way, what you see here, all of it can absolutely change. Not just the text, but the marks, all of it. This is not my personal responsibility to do it. It's just an outsider that can come in, that can actually be adopted in, which is a whole nother conversation, which I'll get to, and actually take some responsibility and accountability, showing the individuals how it can actually be done. A good example is how this call got started. We're all in different parts of the world, but we all have a heart that's aligned with actually making a difference and seeing the Kingdom of Hawaii, or the Hawaiian Kingdom, basically being able to stand up. So with that being said, some of the phones that we build actually have a technology that's built into it, which I'll talk a lot about, called Hawaiian Life. It actually comes pre-installed. And what we did was we built a model that, and we're not doing this for money, by the way. This is literally, we're doing this to try and help drive awareness. As a matter of fact, we've shipped in tons of phones and given them away to help people understand what the potential is. And the potential all revolves around what we call keys, or key management, or derived keys. And some of you may feel like, I can't get this, I don't understand it, this doesn't make any sense. And I'm going to try and explain it to you, because it's really, really important for you to get this. Like, it's imperative for you to understand this. Most of you use a credit card. I don't know if you're seeing my hand up here. But when you use a credit card, you basically have a public key on the front, the 16 digits, and then sometimes you have digits on the back. Not sometimes, you always do. And they'll ask you, if you're using it remotely, if you could give them the expiration date, maybe a zip code, and then the 16 digits on the front, and then the numbers on the back. If you do it like physically with someone, you don't usually need to do that. But what's to stop someone from just taking a photo of that and having both a public key on the front and a private key on the back? The way that humanity has rolled out the financial systems is all upside down. It literally enables how many, I won't even ask for a quantity or a raise of hands, but have you ever had someone use your credit card and you're like, I don't even know where that charge came from. I got to go talk to the bank, right? And when you go talk to the bank, which by the way, you get a bank account number from them and authorization to actually work within that ecosystem, and they can shut that down at any time. When you get the bank account, you're either going to use your social security number, if you have one, or a federal employer identification number, if you're a company and have one. Those things are mandatory to open up a bank. And what it does is it puts the actual financial system in control of a number that then you get. Do you memorize your bank account number? Some people say I do. Some people, they don't. In this case, these 12 words replace your number, not only for the financial system, but also for all of technology. And when I say all of technology, what I'm talking about is what you normally use within the Apple ecosystem or Google ecosystem. Your contacts, your calendar, your mail, your photo, your texts, how they synchronize with other devices. All of this, including other things such as maybe wallets and keys or others. All of this basically uses a derived key set off of the original 12 words that you get. So on this screen, it's really important for you to understand. On the two left sides, everyone on this call most people on this call, Charles has been off of it for about 5 months now, but you're either using Google or Apple. And so instead of logging into those devices the way that you historically do, you actually just use your fingerprint that identifies you. And if you've already synchronized your fingerprint with an Apple phone and you're using Face ID, it'll be your Face ID that authenticates you, but it ties into these 12 words or a derived set of these 12 words. Now, these 12 words are what they would call a cryptographic key. In short, cryptography. In short, crypto. Please don't confuse this with what the world is doing with legalized, not even legalized gambling. In some cases, it's just straight gambling and speculation. And I would say in 95% of the cases, when we talk about cryptocurrencies, most of them are just straight up fraudulent. And what I mean by that is there's no real structure or use case or value or asset behind them. Some people would say, no, Bitcoin has some value to it. And some people would say it doesn't. I would say that it does. The value is the people believing in the need to go and get a device, what they call a miner or a node, which is an x86 based system or an ARM based system that has capabilities to do a mathematical calculation. And that mathematical calculation adds no value for humanity. Literally, there's no value for that other than getting the actual coins out to the people that are actually plugging these devices into power and paying a power bill. That is the value that's behind Bitcoin. It's the power bill. So it's expensive to pay for the power. If you've got free power, you've got a competitive advantage and you can start mining these coins. But most of you have all said, I don't want anything to do with this crypto stuff. It's just a fad, or if it's the future, I really don't want to be any part of it. But I would try and help you to just pause and question that just for a little while until I'm done. Today, there's an ecosystem called Hawaiian.life. And it is starting, but you'll see it continue to morph and grow, especially based upon the leadership within these ecosystems that can give us some clarity around definitions and names. And a lot of that's going to come from research and history that a lot of folks will come together and actually vote. And that's one of the benefits of systems like this, is you can actually have a voice of total transparency, honesty, as long as we engage this system. For me personally, I don't vote and I don't care about politics. I think that politics and even religion has a really strong way, in some ways, of dividing folks or aligning them in an ecosystem that then does the same types of things around control, which is a different conversation. So when you look at this Hawaiian Life app ecosystem, it does the same thing where it gives you these keys. So I don't know if you can see down here, but you can download it on any of the stores. So if you go to like Apple, the store, and you type in Hawaiian Life, you can literally download it. You plug in your first name only, and then you get 12 words. You're going to want to copy those. And the best way to do it is to write them down in such a way where you won't lose them. If you need, you can always go back into your phone and actually see them again. But if you lose your phone and you don't have them, then all the data is lost. Now, here's the difference. You can either go to a federal government and either get a social security number or a federal employer identification number, and then you can get a bank account, which can then be lost without your choice, or you can take responsibility and accountability and not lose these words. There's also a future where you can actually use your family, or in Aotearoa or New Zealand, we talk about whakapapa, which your family, your genealogy, those that have gone before us that are a part of us. This work is very important because not only does it tie the past with the future, but technology in an intelligently organized way can actually free the future, whereas our generation is starting to be enslaved like prior generations were physically enslaved. When I say physically enslaved, I'm talking about a ball and a chain around their ankles. In this ecosystem, we may feel like we're free, but I would argue how many of you may feel like technology is either a ball or chain around you or around your posterity's ankles. If you've got grandkids, if you've got kids, how much do you see their eyes stuck to those screens? Is it affecting their spirit? Is it affecting their heart? Is it affecting their mana, their identity? So with that being said, the identity is a very important part of life. This is one of the services that this digital world enables an entity like the Hawaiian Kingdom to be able to stand up, an adoption certificate, where two parties come together and actually can invite someone else to be a part of their family, their life, their culture. I was surprised by this when I was actually approached by two people, Wilmont or Kamanu and Charles, who's on this call. One day before a meeting, they just said, we have something we'd like to talk to you about. And that preceded this process, which basically I was given a name. Charles, can you pronounce this for me until I learn it better?
Michael, Maka'ala o Ia'i'o Ikepono. Proper. Or better known as Maka.
Maka. And for me, that's beautiful. And I'm excited to learn more about the definitions of the words and the letters and the sounds, because I know they mean a lot. But the interpretation that Kamanu and Charles went through, one who is aware of the truth that leads to righteousness or being in the right place at the right time for all the right reasons. That means the world to me, and I hope that I can actually live up to that, especially before I take the last breath. I would ask each of you, why do you identify, or why do we identify and register and license and get taxed within a particular state? I'll throw the state of Hawaii out there in parentheses. So in other words, I'm an individual that went through an adoption process. Sometimes that adoption process happens at states. Sometimes it happens in different ecosystems. And sometimes it's not even an adoption. Sometimes it's maybe a car or other assets or a license. So I'll just throw this question out and I'll come back through a process of answering. And here, I mean, I've seen, as I've gone through and met with a lot of these different ecosystems of leaders that do different things, I find that there's different licenses that have been created, different license plates that have been created, and different processes that have gone through to separate the individual from the state of Hawaii, because it's just not recognized, because it's really not truth. Anyone that has studied, like I personally spent many days learning and even going into the archives and into the registry and to understand the Kingdom of Hawaii and the massive advancements that it had, not just on the land, but on who owned it. And it's really more important than who owned it, but how it was actually given. It was God's land, Akua's land. And we as individuals were stewards over it. And I'm talking we as past tense. You know, I'm still learning lots about how things happen, but I do know that what happened was thievery. It was not understood. I've met the people in some cases that have gone from island to island to get signatures, massive amounts of signatures to try and change things, only to have it fall on deaf ears, to then have presidents come through and say, we apologize, and this and this and this is how we apologize, but nothing really materially comes of it. We know what truth is. You know what truth is. I'm not here to tell you what that truth is, but I am here to ask you a question. Why do we identify, register, license, and tax with states? Particularly, the United States of America the founding fathers actually decentralized the authority to the counties, not to the states, to govern the individuals. It was actually physically done through the sheriff that was local to them in their respective counties. If you've ever gone and voted within the United States of America, you'll find that you don't do it with the state, you do it with a county. And you'll find that what they've done is they've broken the different counties into jurisdictions within the Hawaiian archipelago of islands. So you'd have to ask yourself, well, if I vote within a county, why is the county also do the health registrations? So if you've ever said, you know, I don't want to have my child take that kind of vaccination, you can go through a process of opting out of it, but it's done at the county level. So when you really start understanding county and law, the sitting judges or even sheriff within these ecosystems that are usually elected by a vote actually have more authority than a president. I won't talk about if the president or whatever administration question. And I think this question is massively important. As we go through this, we'll talk a little bit about what an identity is. So we talk about the state, but we also talk about different brands, marks that are within the kingdom. And this, again, this is not my fiduciary responsibility, but yours to go through. But I think if I help to ask the questions, you may be able to get there, at least whatever the right outcome is. One of the reasons that Kamanu and I gelled so well was when I told him their identity is actually really, really important, who you are and your genealogy, and not to share it with others, but to be able to keep your genealogy and your name close. When you look at this slide, you see down here a middle name and a last name is not divulged. Same thing. So you've got a document that is a physical document and then an application that is a digital application, and they coincide with these encryption keys. These encryption keys are basically keys that are derived keys from those 12 words. So you've got to get that one concept. If you haven't heard anything else I've said, link up those 12 words are basically these long digits, okay? So those 12 words basically make up these long digits. And the other thing that's important for you to know, just like 12 words can make up these long digits, which is called a hash key, your family and contacts can also help build the 12 words. So in the future, even if people lose their words, their family, their connections, their contacts can actually help to rebuild their identity, not some centralized system. I would argue that this same wonderful man, Kamanu, went to the DMV or went to the state and said, I lost my license, I lost my birth certificate. It just so happens my house burnt down and my work burnt down and my city burnt down. And this man was instructed to go to the state and to get a birth certificate, even though he had written birth certificates for his children and understands the responsibility of a father to be able to be accountable, to know why should we just go and trust, identify with a particular entity. And so he basically went and got his birth certificate, and now it says that he is Japanese and Caucasian. For those of you that know him, you know what is happening. So a birth certificate, a driver's license, a death certificate, a marriage certificate, all of it can basically be had within this ecosystem, all based upon derived keys that are cryptographically derived. So what that is a system underneath the system that actually identifies the individual. You don't need the identity. You don't need to look at the picture. You don't need to look at the names and the words. They don't matter. It's that device. It's that. Have you ever walked through the airport and nowadays they don't even ask for your boarding pass? They don't even look at you. They literally just grab that license. In some cases, it's a real ID with a little star on the top, and they plug it into a machine and pops out. What I'd ask you to do is take a picture of that machine and go look it up. What you'll find is the same cryptography-based system behind it. The problem is, and this is another key takeaway that you've got to understand, The world will go digital. The question is, will it be centralized or decentralized? And what the whole purpose of my involvement here and on Earth and in some of the occupations that I've had the opportunity to choose within this technology ecosystem is to ensure that decentralization is a choice. People don't have to choose it. It may be a little bit more, in some ways the goal should be simpler, but it may be less convenient. For instance, it's really convenient just to get an Android phone and just plug in your email address, and it links up the IMEI numbers, it links up the phone numbers, it links it up with some unique numbers on the back end, and you literally are centralized like you can't even believe. And it's not even Google that centralizes you, it's the cellular carriers that do. But the point that I'm trying to drive here is the identity is cryptographically proven. It's actually, the card itself has a key on it. The key, if used in derived systems, such as creating a business. So I don't know if you see right here where it says digital world identity, that's an encryption key for a business. Instead of being an individual, it can actually be a business. Imagine if you go through a process like a census and you actually scan something and you're automatically logged in versus going through a process and saying, I'm going to fill out my name, my phone number, all these other data points into a system that is actually can centrally profile you. That's why when people come around for the census time, some of you are saying, you know what, they don't need to know my name. They don't need to know who lives here. They don't need to know, it's like overreaching. But the point that I'm driving at, if you create a profile in such a way, and you don't even use the cryptography systems, but you do it, but you don't share your name, you're in a whole different ecosystem. So what we're talking about is your name doesn't get shared, but who you are can be validated. So imagine a genealogical system after you actually enter in some of your data points, which you own the data of, that can actually build a connection to your family. So in other words, it builds your genealogy that you own and control, not some central system, not Family Search, not Ancestry, not 23andMe. You own your own data. And then how that can actually tie to the land and ecosystem which you grew up in. In Aotearoa, it's just as important, the land of your family, your whakapapa, your iwi, your marae, where you came from, to be able to identify. You know this, it's innately in you. At being Kanaka Maori, you're the same Polynesian bloodlines. It's the same importance of connecting family with a piece of a mountain or a stream, or those connections can actually be done cryptographically. They can be seen in different ways. Imagine the ability for these types of systems to identify you. Imagine the ability for systems that actually, like this meeting that we're having now, imagine you can provide notice to everyone and say, these are the things we're going to talk about, and then there's going to be a vote. You click on it, you scan it, and you actually have, your voice has been heard in real time. You can see it, everyone can see it. I believe that many, many different systems, countries, provinces, ecosystems have been taken over because voting systems are corrupt. And you can see this within multiple different environments. I won't go into the details because most of you already understand it. But imagine council meetings where you have the meetings, the set, then you have the topics and agenda, then you have the voting in real time, and you can operate a governance system, not a government system, but a governance system for humanity. I mean, that's leaders have no problem. Like the individuals that I've all met with, they don't have a problem making decisions, but they also don't want to make a decision that's not what the people want. And so there's a closed loop that needs to happen there, where knowledge is actually transmitted based upon factual data, based upon good questions and good answers. And then it ties to other systems. I would argue that when America or Americans came to Hawaii, or Hawaiians, one of the things that they did was focus on commerce and how money was actually spent. It wasn't about what was sold or bought. It was about what was purchased on. In some ways, we've seen measurements in the past. Maybe they were coffee beans, maybe they were pig tusks, maybe they were, by the way, if you haven't seen those pig tusks, which I should probably pull out, those pig tusks were actually the first form of money. Have you ever heard of a piggy bank? The piggy bank, like for instance in Vanuatu, they've got a full island that actually, or, well, it's not a full island, but Pentecost Island still has a building in it where they actually store these pig tusks. And they actually still have very important purposes, but it goes back to the same, not even bartering, it's deeper than bartering, but the ability to provide a transaction or a payment. In this ecosystem today, based upon these meetings, you'll see some of these, we've gone through a process of standing up a dala. Now, some could say, was there enough people involved? Was everyone aware of it? And that's a part of what needs to really happen, is enough people need to drive the awareness of what can happen with technology with no central system governing it, but a system of people communicating based upon what they want, and then service providers doing it. Now, that could be done in councils, or that could be done in a kingdom type structure. What's gorgeous to me is I haven't found one person that doesn't give the responsibility and accountability back to Akua, like literally. And then they understand, as a father or a mother, they have stewardship over their immediate family to teach them true and correct principles, and then let them govern themselves. You're seeing crazy things in society today, and maybe you're not seeing it, but they're actually starting to link up to the conscience within the human. So we've got a couple things spinning. We've got machine learning that is really getting strong. We've got artificial intelligence, which is starting to leverage machine learning and other things, which is even a very disruptive and concerning. But then you actually have a whole nother level of conscious intelligence that can link to this artificial intelligence and provide a level of, I believe, a level of destruction that we can't even imagine, so to speak. This business management system is also something, instead of going to a country and getting a social security number, you can go get a federal employer identification number, and then you can get a bank account. Well, in a system like this, you can actually do it in a very disruptive way. And what I mean by that is you can create a business that can create assets that can then be shared. And we'll talk a little bit. I'm going to try and get this gone. Yeah, there we go. So land management is another very important topic. Around one system for one people, for one globe. It's like Wikipedia, but everyone has access to it, and there's total transparency that everything that happens. And if you use the timestamps of cryptography to be able to do this, it can actually leapfrog over the existing system. So imagine Wikipedia meets land management, and oh, by the way, the rebuilding of Lahaina is already using the same technology. When you create a business, or an entity or an individual creates an asset, you can literally link those assets to that individual, and then you can basically pay for them with the digital asset and receive the digital asset. So what that means is the ownership is actually cryptographically defined. So you can know by a simple registration like this, you can see who owns it, or you can actually scan something. Like you could scan a license plate and automatically see who is it registered to without even knowing the person's name, maybe their first name and a photo, like kind of like what you would see here. But you would also see, is this insured? Is this financed? Is this stolen? Who's authorized to drive it, et cetera, et cetera. And you could even see maybe a prior existing license plate number that may have been previously registered by a prior owner and or to the state that maybe before it was purchased, et cetera. If it's a new vehicle, you could literally think about it. How many of you have purchased new vehicles? Maybe it's a boat, maybe it's a motorcycle, maybe it's a truck, maybe it's a car, maybe it's an RV, maybe it's a trailer. And you're told you have to register it. Do you know that you can actually register in other jurisdictions and still drive your vehicle? So if I'm in New Mexico and I buy a car in California and I register it in Arizona, have I violated any laws? So you really need to ask yourself, why do I register, license, identify, and tax within an ecosystem? What if within an ecosystem, we're focused on not enslaving folks? Slavery is a part of taxing without representation or providing value. That's also tyranny. So the ability for someone to provide value and work and someone else to take it, whether they agree with it or not, without providing transparency, that's tyranny. It's wrong. So for instance, in our minds, we think, we drive on smooth roads, at least some of us do. Our kids go to XYZ school, at least some of us do. XYZ hospital provides XYZ services. And so maybe the schools and the roads actually get some of the taxes. What most people don't know is that's usually a part of a sales tax or a property tax or a use tax. It's usually not tied to an income tax, whether state related or federal related. But again, this is not a tax conversation. This is an asset management conversation that ties to the individual being able to own it. So do you register it? Do you title it? Can it actually operate within an ecosystem? These are all really important questions. And what they'll have is a combination of really validating. So you probably have known people that have said, you know what, I'm not going to drive with a driver's license. I'm not going to drive with a license plate. I have a right, whether it's under the Hawaiian Kingdom law or even the American Kingdom law, the United States of America, under constitutional protection, that the Supreme Court has actually even ruled upon that it's valid, which is an individual can transmit or transfer or travel. They can go from point A to point B freely without being impeded, without being stopped, without being questioned. Now, some would say, well, we have these laws, they're called speed limits, or all the other many laws that are created on moving violations. But one would have to say, do I have to provide my identity when that is actually the case? And so in some cases, when someone has done something very wrong, maybe there's substance involved or excessive speed or crazy things, one might say, you know what, I'll go ahead and provide my name because I know I did something wrong, and I'll try and do the right thing and comply. Others have seen where you just don't comply and other things escalate. A lot of it has to do with the local law enforcement not understanding and acknowledging the certain laws. For instance, I know of a gentleman back in Utah who's now dead because he understood his rights, his mother understood her rights, and they tried to do what they thought was the right thing. And he wouldn't identify himself. It's not that he didn't have a license plate on the car, didn't have anything. The only thing that he would show from an ID standpoint was his passport. And he actually showed the passport and still got shot to death. So the point that I'm trying to drive at is, it's a very fine line when we talk about conflict and awareness, especially when we're talking about the law enforcement understanding that they're there to actually be a public servant, to serve the individuals, to keep things safe, which I would say, especially, and I'm going to turn this light on for you. In Aotearoa or New Zealand, did you know that no one can sue someone else if let's say that there is a car accident, and let's say someone lost a life or they lost a limb? You can't actually sue the other party. Here in Hawaii, there are legal systems that go through that process, or whether you want to call lawful or legal or whatever, they basically would go through that. And you see a lot of things that come out of that where there's action, so to speak, or maybe it's an asset is taken from one to another, maybe its freedom is taken. So understanding that different jurisdictions can create different laws based upon what they see is right for the people, and the people can actually have a voice in that. If these types of digital systems are not adopted, that conscience that I was telling you is getting linked up to the actual systems, what they'll do is they'll just, where they're going with it is they're basically going to say, there's a catastrophe within humanity. We've had some massive war. And to be able to come out of this war, if you want to travel, you have to have this type of ID and you have to have this type of currency. And the next thing you know, there is no cash ecosystem. It's not even an option to spend American dollar, let alone a Hawaiian dollar. You literally will have to comply with the system if there's not an alternative system that is actually just as mature and it can do the same types of things. It can cryptographically identify you. It can link with the existing financial systems, etc. So really important to know and understand. At this point, I can log in and actually show you how the systems work, show you how the technology, because everything that I just mentioned is very real and viable. So what I'll do is I'll literally just do that real fast. So I'm just going to pull open. I wish I had. I'm going to go to Hawaiian.life. I'm going to click on login. I'm going to grab a device such as my phone. I'm going to open up the Hawaiian Life app on my phone. I'm going to click the scan button for QR code on both my phone and others, and then I'm going to log in. So on my phone, it said login validated. On my system, it said login validated. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come in here. And you can see on my left that I have different types of things around certifications, councils, disputes, licenses, organizations. Maybe it's a business, maybe it's voting, registrations, assets. These are all the same things that we just went through, but I as an individual can actually come in and create them dynamically on the fly. So let's say I wanted to create a business. Let's say I wanted to create, I'm just going to scan this again as well. So this is actually going to create a derived key for this, for me within this business system. So instead of me creating a business and putting my name on it, this is proving who I am, which then I can actually validate in the future. You can also invite other people to be a part of the business. I'm just going to do a real generic one. This is going to be ABC. Oh, actually, I don't want to do that because it may be confusing in this area. XYZ. Actually, these are actually real domains. So you can imagine the ability to register domains. You can register up to 430 different domains, top level domains where the back part of it is actually unique. You can also register in other jurisdictions. Right now, we'll just focus on this particular jurisdiction. I'm going to find XYZ logo. And you'd want to actually create a logo, but in this case, what we're going to do is we're just going to borrow one. Actually, there's a corp right there. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and create this business. So we just created a business within the digital world and within the Hawaiian Kingdom, particularly the jurisdiction of the Hawaiian Kingdom specifically. So you can see this XYZ Corp. You can actually see this is what the public would see. So here you can see that this is a digital organization. This is the logo. This is the unique identifier. That's a cryptographic key. That's a derived key. You can see when it was incorporated. You can see if it's active or not. By the way, wouldn't it be nice to never have to renew a business or to never have to renew a vehicle from a registration standpoint? You can still do safety, but you don't have to do it in that same element. Notice the reputation score here is 0. Notice that there's a digital manager. So I was actually the one that created it. And this ties to my digital identity. Do you remember how I scanned it? So the world can see that there's an individual that is behind it, but they don't need to know what the last name is. They don't need to, they can see that I've got other things, maybe a birth certificate, marriage, divorce, death. I don't have any assets. Maybe I registered a vehicle. Don't have any other ecosystem. So you can see, and what's nice is you can actually send requests to go and see a particular thing. So let's say that you want to see this birth certificate. Someone can actually send a request and actually go. Let's see if this will work. So that request would go to the individual, and then I can approve it, and then I can say what I want to actually share with them. In that particular case, it's just my birth certificate. And in that particular case, not even sharing my last name within my birth certificate. This would actually, so I hope you're understanding that you've got two things that are going on here. One, you've got a business that was created and a public page based upon that business, which is like a business registry. And then you've got an individual that created that business registry that can actually be public. So everything is public and transparent, but the individual owns their name. Names are very, very important, not just because of how they identify you, but because of how it links within genealogical systems, not just for today, but think 5 generations from now, trying to link. And it's not just trying to link, but the importance of cryptographically linking these systems together. So imagine people within your communities, within your family, within your ecosystems, actually caring about doing genealogy work that is accurate and linking it up, even if it goes not through bloodlines, but through adoption processes. So what we've created here, jumping back to the business, is a business, and it can accept different types of currencies, etc. It can have a reputation score. You can add other members to it. So let's say I wanted to have 5 people work with me on governing this business. I can invite them here, whether through a scan or whether through an email, and then it'll send an invite back out to them. You can also set up voting within the company as well. So let's say you wanted to have a particular type of question. Let's say you wanted to say is, okay, so what color do you like, green or silver? You can say that it's going to end on a particular day. It's end in 2 weeks. We're going to add that poll. So now people that are involved directly or indirectly with this can actually go and vote publicly within that ecosystem. So what we'll do is we'll come back over to this public page. We'll refresh. And you'll start seeing, well, we still see this as 0. So we actually have to get some responses before it goes up. So let's come back in, and what we're going to do is we're going to create a digital asset. So let's say that this XYZ Corp has XYZ car. Let's say that this is a I'm going to leave. You can actually pick different types of assets. So maybe it's something, it's a company that you want to take public eventually. Maybe it's something that is a personal effect that you want to keep in with the family. Maybe it's a type of reward or something you want to give to folks as a benefit. Or maybe it's something that is a private entity that may have a private value to it that is predetermined by an ecosystem. So you would actually determine the value. Let's go ahead and select one of those. Actually, let's select an asset. So we're going to link this asset to a certain dollar amount. You can select which currency you want to link it to. You could link it to the Hawaiian dollar. You could link it to US dollars. And that's one thing that's important to understand is everyone knows US dollar value. And so if you link the Hawaiian dollar to the US dollar value, it has a 1-to-1 ratio. And if you actually have 1-to-1 what we call liquidity, you don't risk anything. It's not gambling. It's not speculating. kind of like what the banks do. It's 10 to 1. So if you have $100 into a bank in a US bank account, they technically can loan out now $1,000. And then they can make money on the interest. That is how money is created in the current United States of America system. It was also created in other ways by giving other countries printing presses in certain world wars. And you have to ask yourself, why do wars actually occur, and what's the importance of it? Let's say that this vehicle is worth 15,000 US dollars or 15,000 Hawaiian dollar, and you don't want the value to go up or down in the future. If you wanted to lock it, you would lock it so it couldn't change. If you didn't, you just submit it there. We're going to validate the identity again. So again, when we're creating an asset, it also ties to the individual having to validate. So it's what we call 5-factor authentication, something you have, something you are, something you do in a certain space and time. It's the future of security. I'm going to get this out of here. So we're going to go ahead and create this. I'm actually going to put a description in. I'll use the same logo that I had before. So we went in and we just created an asset. Okay. So now we've basically got, we'll go back and view this page. We've got the same company. You now have an asset that's tied to it, and then you can actually pull that asset down onto your particular device. So literally, if I wanted to, I could actually pull the value of this, so these 15,000 down, and I could actually share them with other people. Or what I could do is I can actually register a particular asset within an ecosystem. So I'm going to go ahead and select, let's say that I want to actually tie, by the way, this data is not just the United States of America, but also Canada, Asia, and Europe as well. So we're going to go ahead and say this particular asset is already plated. I don't think that's the right number. Let's see if that picks anything up. Give me a quick second here. Does anybody know a license plate number off the top of your head? If not, it'll just take me a second to find one.
HLH 317.
Okay, so this is going to look up whether it's off of a license plate number or a VIN number, and actually try and find.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's LHL 317.
LHL.
LHL
317.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so this is going to search the existing records and systems that humanity has centralized, which, by the way, the central systems are actually with the private membership association, similar to what I talked about before, also similar to what the bar associations are a part of. So it's not just the legal system, but also other systems. Maybe it's the medical system. Maybe it's like literally all of these systems use private membership capabilities to actually validate what they're doing, which is a whole nother conversation. Does this vehicle look familiar to you? Whoever gave me that? So you can
It's my vehicle, yes.
So you can see the VIN number, you can see the license plate, and now you can actually start managing this particular device with the car within your environment. So here you can see, is this actually going to be used for delivering services, rideshare, Lyft, Uber, etc.? If it is, there's a classification that individual needs to jump through that's different than a constitutional right or protection of being able to just travel without having any kind of licenses in addition. Other things, this also ties to enabling, imagine an ecosystem that actually can offer financing for the vehicle, because it knows you, it knows your reputation, it knows the vehicle, it knows the vehicle's reputation. So imagine an offer for insurance or for financing automatically to be realized. I want you just to think about what I just said. Right now, to go and get financing, people have to jump through a bunch of hoops. All we needed to do was understand a VIN number and the individual that actually didn't even provide their name. Imagine if you actually wanted to log into the existing banking system with credentials and authenticate, the ability to not take data from the system, but to validate your credit score. So for instance, there will be financing in the future of homes, of vehicles, and other things without even doing a credit report. You just say, I'm interested in it. It automatically goes into everything that you are, and it actually pulls it out. Now, here's the scary part of it. It'll actually go into your bank account that you currently have. It'll know when you started that bank account. It'll know what, just like a vehicle. Banks and vehicles and reputation, they all tie together. So it knows transactions. It knows how many transactions. It knows negative days that you've had balances, what your average balances are. It knows maybe you've spent 10 grand 10 times within the last 100 days. It understands your buying habits. Imagine the centralized system knowing all that data about you, and then offering you the ability to get financing. The world is going to go there because they want financing. The American dream is not to be able to buy a house. It's to be able to get financing to buy the house. And if you don't have identity and comply with their system, there's a lot of people that live on the streets without a house. I went to the DMV 2 weeks ago, and I tried to understand all the different hoops that people had to jump through to be able to get a license. And literally, I don't know if you've done this recently, but this is the long list of paper of things that are acceptable that you can actually use. And what they're trying to do is they're not trying to foolproof it. Anybody can create this stuff up. They can create a set of license documents that has a different address and a different name on it. I mean, it's not. What they're trying to do is control people that are honest people that comply. It's not the people that actually want to fraudulently do something within the system. But if you give people their own identity and their own ability to self-govern themselves, imagine the system that can also do the same type of thing. So what I'm trying to say is the centralized systems are going to give people credit because they're profiling you so tightly. But what if the decentralized systems can also give you credit based upon your reputation, based upon your assets, and based upon real banking principles that are actually, so let's say you drive, let's say you've owned it for less than a year. Let's not set up maintenance. All of this stuff can automatically be known. So if I scan this, I would actually be adding your vehicle to my profile. When I add things within this system, not only am I validating it, but it's on public record as well. So you may not know my identity, but you can know that I actually added a vehicle. So I won't scan this and say next, otherwise I would inappropriately add someone's vehicle. Now, the important thing about understanding what governance systems are is a part of it is dispute. So let's say I did add Charles' vehicle to my system, and it's transparent. Charles now sees that vehicle, because he's already registered it, someone else registered that vehicle. Right now in the ecosystems, identity fraud happens all the time. Like, people can go get a mortgage on someone else's home with their credit, get the money, and the person didn't even know about it. This stuff happens all the time. And the reason that you're not hearing about it is because the banks now are issuing money to basically pay people back. For instance, on those credit cards, when they give away the credit card with the public key and the private key on the back, and someone uses it and you tell your bank within 6 months, they'll literally give you your money back. So think about that. It's making you more connected to the system and relying on the system. You can either rely on the centralized systems, or you can take accountability and responsibility to have a decentralized system for the future of humanity. And this is not just for registering some vehicle. It's literally for your own identity and data. So I hope this example makes sense. I hope you can understand that you can go through, you can actually go and get, you know, an adoption process, a birth, a marriage, counsels, all of these systems without even a username and password. And all we didn't go into a bank, but you can transact value. You can send value back and forth in real time with no government, with no bank, with no fees. The fees can even go on to actually help provide value for, and I'll see if I can. So now that we've gone through that system, I hope, you know, you understand what you just saw. Before we go any further, is there any questions or feedback or thoughts? I'm going to get into basically some of the finance sides of it and why. Go ahead, if there's any questions or thoughts. If not, I'll just continue.
Well,
Wait, wait, please.
Okay.
Okay. Hi, this is Barbara von Hohenberg, and but for a cold, I probably would be appearing here a little bit more. What you're saying is very interesting. I like the idea of the kingdom being off the system. Please pardon the dogs in the background, but this is so broad, and there are so many special people you have in our group here that probably want to interact with you and ask specific questions to specific things. It's a great summary. I don't know how many on the panel here in our council are following all of this, but I think that it's a good suggestion for the future for us to explore. But I think we need a special interest group in many different ways. We need legal, financial, technological, and we have to also have a political forum on this because of the sensitivities of our interfacing with the governments that we are. And that's globally as well as in the governance of Hawaii as it is now. So that's all I have to say. I take a breath. You've done a brilliant job explaining this. It's so sweeping. Your Majesty, what do you think?
well, I'm going to hold my opinion for a little while. Only because it is intriguing as well as interesting. But most importantly, I want everyone to get a good understanding of what is going on and the governance and how our information is used and for what purpose it can be used. It can be exploited with the current system, as he pointed out. And that's why there's so much problems, identity theft and so forth and so on. Is that correct, Michael?
Absolutely, spot on, 100%. So I'll continue forward, and this may turn on some more lights and even underscore the comment that Barbara made. It's very, I'll go ahead and see if I can get rid of this time. Trying to do this all off of one screen, and I don't know why the other ones. Let's see if I can share it this time. Okay, so, oh, beautiful, wonderful. Love it when things work. Okay, so what we're going to do is go next into an area that has, there may not be answers, and this by design, and I think it just underscores some of the questions that you had intelligently brought up just a second ago. I don't know where that went. So, imagine an ecosystem where, now this is I'm going to say this a couple times because it's really important to understand it. All we need to do to solve most of the issues that perplexes or is harming humanity is grow food locally, buy locally, and use the local currency. Those three things. It's not more complicated than that. But what you have to have are systems that actually understand that 200 years ago, the Hawaiian Islands were self-sufficient because they grew enough food not only to feed themselves, but to feed the visitors that came through. Nowadays, we're feeding a lot of visitors, but literally $3 billion a year is spent to feed almost 7 million visitors and the residents of just Oahu alone. We're talking 85 to 90% of all food is imported. So when we talk about growing food locally, it has to have something that's coming from a grassroots effort where either the governing ecosystem or bodies are actually investing in growing food to be self-reliant. Because if you're self-reliant, you're not going to be a part of a centralized system that when your tummy gets hungry every 4 hours or 5 hours or however often you want to eat, you're not just going to be a slave to that system. I would argue that in the future, food is going to be a very important topic. I'm not talking about war. I'm not talking about death. I'm not talking about viruses. I'm talking about food. And to be able to shop creates an opportunity to drive, again, those three things: growing local, shopping local, using the local currency. And I'll jump into some specifics. If the Hawaiian Islands or archipelago of islands, and we know that there's more island than just what's here, has a governing entity to it, no matter how it's broken up, whether it's maybe each island becomes a state, maybe it's county, these are all your questions to ask. But the big difference, what is the difference between the Kingdom of Hawaii and the state of Hawaii? This is something that I can give you my perspective, but I believe that you are all much better set to define this. The Kingdom of Hawaii, there's a difference between the Kingdom of Hawaii and the Hawaiian Kingdom. Usually it's a term that is made interchanging against one another, but when you really, at least the research that I was able to do, which is a third party, but absolutely care, when I went through and read the treaties with different countries, most of them, about 80% of them to 85% of them, said the Hawaiian Kingdom. Then later on, you see the Hawaiian Kingdom shift as a term to the Kingdom of Hawaii. They use different logos, different marks, but the words shift from Hawaiian Kingdom to Kingdom of Hawaii. Then they shift to State of Hawaii. So I would just say there's a history of progression. So maybe to do certain things in alignment, there needs to be some basic understanding and definitions. What is it that we're looking at here? And I'm going to go through what's on the left because this is a new element, but something that is a possible solution to a lot of the vexing issues that humanity currently has. On the right is the mark or the seal that goes on the dollar bills, the original dollar bills, the seal of the United States of America, which I am an American. My bloodlines, my birthrights, I go all around the world, but in all reality, my heart is aligned with the values of what it was to be an American. And I say that was because I believe that there are conflicts and issues that are coming that are by design because it's been allowed, which is a whole nother conversation. So then I would also go in to say, what is the difference between all three of these marks? And we'll come back to this in the future. Each one of the representations of the twins, the crown, the marks here are very, very important. And they're not lost. They're still there. This element of a new mark is something that is being interjected and is not approved, is not validated, is not real. But it is something that I believe we can actually start to understand as the Hawaiian dollar becomes more mature and understood for future. So these colors are actually within the state of Hawaii as defined as colors within each one of the different islands. Okay, so these colors represent the different islands. When we take the different islands and group them together in what they call counties, this is what they represent. When we put the different elements and separate them, they also break into earth, wind, fire, and water. And when you combine them, they come into a color palette that is multiple colors. And when you mix these colors, you actually end up with purple. I'm sure you're already aware of that and the importance of colors and marks and signs. I'll just put this aside for a second and jump into a timeline that was defined on the prior slide as well as on the website, but it didn't have the definitions of this inside of it. Why? Because when we talk about these different islands and a percentage, that's where a lot of concerns comes into play, because you have people like me who I was born in Utah and I am an American by social security number and passport. And I love the Hawaiian Islands. And when I come out here, I don't feel judged. I don't feel discriminated, but I do look at what's happened with the Hawaiian Kingdom, and I know that wrong has been done. And I went to all the national parks. I talked with the people there, whether they worked for the government or whether they were local and just providing a service. I felt the spirit there. And for most of you that have been to the national parks, you know and understand what is right and what is wrong and how things should be governed. And you also understand the accountability and responsibility that is built into a lot of the Hawaiian ecosystems. But what you're seeing here is 20% that's actually not defined. So allodial titles are peppered within the 20% that is actually already built upon. So there's lands that have buildings, whether they're homes or commercial entities, that actually have title questions. And so I went into an Old Republic title company, which is one of a very small handful, like 2, maybe 3, in all of the Hawaiian Islands. One would have to ask themselves, why are there so little title companies? One would have to ask, why are there such limited insurance companies? 2. One would have to ask, and which I did, I went into one of the title companies and I said, what if I bought a house and I paid $10 million for it, and then in 10 years from now or 2 years from now or sometime in the future, the house that I thought I bought for $10 million, the land wasn't actually, we're getting feedback somewhere, the land wasn't actually theirs to sell. And they said, well, that's what title insurance does for you. We would make sure that that's the case. And, so I said, would you pay me the $10 million back? And they said, yeah, if it went through the process and that was determined that we didn't find that was our fault. Yeah. I said, what happened if it actually happens with many islands at the same time? And this lady was really very responsive. She listened. She was very good. And she was honest and said, in all intents and purposes, each state has its own business and liability associated with that business. So one would have to think, would it actually span into other states? And I won't go in any further, primarily because the contents of this dialogue is actually live. So the next slide is focused on learning from the past. So Portugal, many people might not understand this, but for the past 1,500 years, the reserve currencies actually was not only held by the United States of America, of which most of us weren't born before 1920, so we don't remember those days. But if we go back to 1450, for 80 years, Portugal was the reserve currency. Then Spain for 110 years, then the Netherlands for 80 years, then France for 95 years, then Britain for 105 years. And the United States, some would argue that the renminbi out of China is actually taken over the purchasing of oil, which is why the reserve currency was set for the US dollar, starting in 2017. There's a mark here with the Hawaiian dollar element, or a potential element, that represents something that could be a future. Now, a reserve currency? Probably not. Something that makes a massive change? Why? Because of how the actual systems work. It replaces all the existing financial systems humanity currently has, and it will interface with the future financial systems that humanity, namely the large countries, are trying to integrate to. And you could say, how's this guy know this? And there's a whole nother conversation around that. But I promise you, the financial systems of the future, the system that I'm talking about, will actually do it. And here's an example of existing systems that you currently use. Some people use Visa, and the average transactions within a 24-hour period, the average is actually $14 billion, okay? So what this is comparing is Bitcoin, which takes about 10 minutes for full settlement, but 4 or 5 countries have already standardized on. When they standardized on it, they figured out that someone wanting to buy a dozen eggs didn't want to wait 10 minutes to get their eggs. And so they layered on it the Lightning Network. The Lightning Network made it so they almost instantaneously were able to take those eggs and then walk away with them. And the merchant would end up getting their funds when it all settled. But what people don't understand is the same thing that's happening with Visa today, where people think that they actually made a payment and got the product and walk away, that merchant got paid, but it doesn't. The merchant get paid in days, sometimes a day, sometimes 2 days, sometimes over weekends or holidays, it's more. And a percentage of it is kept by the Visa ecosystem. What if I told you that that Lightning Network on this Bitcoin ecosystem that speeds up the 10 minutes almost to instantaneous, like in seconds, is actually a part of the banking system, the Visa system, that actually controls the transactions where countries want to use Bitcoin as a transaction? And so what that effectively is doing is centralizing decentralization. Bitcoin was a technology that was intended to be decentralized. The problem is it wasn't fast enough to run economies on. Fast forward, you have Ethereum that was launched and then assets on Ethereum. The average transaction cost goes up from 2,300 with Bitcoin to 26 million with Ethereum, but the speed drops from 10 minutes on average to 3 minutes on average, and you can pay what they call gas to actually make that faster, but it gets more expensive at the same time. So I hope you're understanding Visa, Bitcoin, and Ethereum, and then compare that with what we're talking about with this hypothetical Hawaiian dollar. So literally less than 1,000th of a cent per transaction.
Hey, Michael?
Yep.
Apologies. Can you have a conversation just for the general group about how, let's say that I have $1 million and I want to put it into this ecosystem of the Hawaiian dollar, how that would work for the overall system, and how that might happen.
Yeah.
There's a reason why I'm asking that.
Yeah.
Hey, excuse me, all of you.
Go ahead.
Thank you, first of all, Michael, for your presentation. Because it's Zoom, I only programmed this for 2.5 hours. So we might have to table and come back later on this. And I also have about 15 minutes. If you could close it down in 15 minutes so we can have another meeting, that'd be great.
Okay.
Because I have some government matters I have to need at least 15 minutes to finish that before Zoom expires.
Okay. So I'll just make this last point here. What's important to understand is with this Hawaiian dollar system, you can actually have real-time payments with next to no fees, like 1,000th of a cent. And then you can actually have no government and no banks in the middle of it. And the individuals actually own their own identity, data, and assets. And to answer the question that you just talked about, if you basically take, and I've got a whole nother set of information, which I won't get into at this time because I want to make sure that we really turn on the lights. But basically what you do is you take municipal bonds and treasury bonds and you provide a value or collateral to them. And I won't be specific on that in this forum. And then you also can insure them as well. And then you can do one-to-one assets from fiat. So Would people want a US dollar that, and even in the banking ecosystems or others, but let's just say that a US dollar was equal to one Hawaiian dollar, and the ability to transfer it was real time, and the ability to even pay other vendors was real time. So I don't want to complicate things so much, but what we're talking about is full economies can actually be run on this in real time. You can actually pay multiple different systems, manage inventory, have all of the audits, and even if returns are done, you can even unwind the audits, and you can actually pay for the system for the same, I believe, for the same value that we're currently paying something like Visa or American Express or Discover or MasterCard. We can actually replace that with a system like this and then peer with that system if we want to, if people want to actually go into that particular asset class. If they want to always use Visa and pay the fees, you can basically convert, and this is the answer to your question, you can convert from the digital world into the fiat world and pay in the fiat systems, whether that's through a bank transfer, ACH, wire, or a credit card payment, any of those types of systems, whether that's through a bond process, whether that's through, there's multiple different types of bond processes, whether that's through an insurance process, whether that's through an audit process that you have. And this is where everyone fails, in my opinion, when we're talking about cryptography. It's about the discipline to make sure that the numbers are accurate and the ownership is real. What I mean by that is, if the individual owns their own encryption keys, no one else can own it, because those encryption keys get paired with their fingerprint. So even if someone steals the 12 words, they still can't rebuild the transactions or take the assets. That's a part of it. The other part of it is, if you have a US dollar and you have a Hawaiian dollar and there's 1-to-1, so if you send someone, if you put in an account a US dollar, then you can actually transfer or convert it, in effect, buy a dollar. And then if they want to sell the dollar and get the US dollar back, it's 1-to-1 conversion. There is no, as long as you have the discipline to make sure there's 1-to-1, there's no funny business that can ever be had. So if you have an audit counsel that understands that, the other side of this, these are the same types of systems that are already working within other ecosystems. They just don't have the cryptography behind them. The same types of companies that built Google Pay, Apple Pay, Samsung Pay. You're already starting to see things with Cash App that'll do certain things where, you can buy and sell Bitcoin within an app that you're selling US dollars or buying and selling US dollars, but you still have the party that's in front of it that is actually loading up or removing the credits and debits with the dollars, as well as owning the keys. So in other words, this system can do what the Cash App system does, but you own your own assets and you own your own data. Imagine this linking with some of the platforms. For instance, the people that actually created Bitcoin, I shouldn't say it this way, the people that created Cash App are the same people that created Twitter. They're the same people that sold Twitter, cashed out, and are now building decentralized systems, but with centralized systems in the middle of it. Think about it. They're the ones that built Square. They're the ones that built. So in other words, Square is where the merchant sits. Cash App is where the consumer sits. Square and Cash App link together. This system can replace it with the user owning their own encryption keys. I'm going to just leave that at that. I won't dig into a lot of the details. What I'm going to jump to is some of the issues that we're dealing with in society. There are secret combinations in the technology industry, the media industry, and others, finance, health, etc., that basically get in and take over governmental ecosystems. It's not that the governments are bad or that the money they create is bad. It's the money creation process that basically creates class segregation and these secret combinations. The way to solve it is through decentralization and the individual owning their own identity, not just financial transactions, but health, their search data, their financial data, their social data. I'm going to jump ahead to something like this. Imagine a future where a type of BRICS is not just Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, but it's a lot of these kingdoms that actually adopt these types of technologies. Why? Because what if this same type of technology was actually being adopted by the BRICS ecosystem, but offered to the indigenous communities that are still standing themselves back up, like Aotearoa, like Indonesia, like the Haitian kingdom, like Samoa, and even the kingdom of Saudi Arabia has done this before. And what if other countries like the kingdom of Saudi Arabia were to buy bonds in these other countries and create a coalition like we haven't seen before, and what we talk about with this oceanic coalition. This is an example of the dollar. This is an example of the shopping ecosystem. Imagine if we just came out once a month, had a wonderful party, and bought local produce. And literally, we actually turn these markets that we all go out to on Saturdays once a month into a massive awareness around. Go ahead. Somebody saying something? So imagine if you could just buy like Hawaiian dollar on gift cards, or maybe just like you already consume things, but you do it within a brand, a Hawaiian brand, where everyone loves aloha. Tell me one person that frowns at you or doesn't say aloha back to you when you don't. Tell me one person that doesn't like the environment within. I believe that this Pacific Ocean is a very sacred part of the world, and the islands in the middle of it, further than everybody else, the climate, the wind, everything is naturally conducive for creating something such as what we're talking about that will span the globe. And it's not just for Polynesian bloodlines. It's for people that want to get behind Hawaiian, that want to
Question.
Go ahead.
Question, Michael. What behind the Hawaiian Doha? What could you tell us what the underlying asset is? What's behind the currency?
That's really up to this body and others to come up with it. I would highly recommend that you have real assets like land, and you have real assets like bonds, they could be different types of bonds. It could be treasury bonds. That's how America was started, through treasury bonds. You could even insure those treasury bonds. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. What you need to know is that there is a corner of this council that is very much involved with the newly formed QFS system, and and the global interest is to go back to gold-backed currency. It will benefit everybody, and we see this as becoming resource rich, because then finally our currencies are going to be worth something again, and we won't have fiat currencies to struggle against, and we won't have central banks deciding to fight inflation with higher interest rates, or all the issues that come along with manipulation of the markets. So I hear you, and I appreciate what you're saying, and I like the idea. Just this is, I think that's the one question I have right now, is what will back this currency that'll give it that much strength?
So I would propose that it's backed with real assets, and gold could be one of those assets that comes off. For instance, what I'm showing you here is actually real gold that's wrapped within a clear cellophane type system. And by state law, they issue each one of them. So for instance, in the state that I'm in within Utah, in the Constitution, gold is actually one of the currencies, as well as silver. So if you basically, you can cash out in gold just like you can cash out in US dollars. So, but you still want to have the strength of that particular asset be able to be quantified and cashed out, if you will. It doesn't matter if it's gold, because I could argue the same thing about gold. Gold is just valuable because it's a trusted medium of value exchange, not because you used it in a tooth filling at all. I mean, it's just valuable because of that particular reason. So one of the other answers is you basically have a couple different things. You could either do it based upon a bond. You could do it based upon, assets and real assets that come in. You could do it based upon an insurance holding. There's multiple different ways to do it. And to be honest with you, when you say QFS, what I'm showing you is the future of QFS, but in real-time rollout right here for the Hawaiian Kingdom, because I believe the Hawaiian Kingdom, if it stands up correctly, and if the people's heart are one and united, the world will get behind it and aloha will be realized. And that is what we need to offset what is coming.
I
And
agree.
we agree.
I agree with that.
Thank you, Your Majesty.
I agree with that and totally. We do stand up for the spirit of aloha, and that's wonderful.
I'm gonna
And
stop now and just
Michael?
let you guys run.
yes,
Uh,
so Michael, Your Majesty, if I can just for a second.
Yes,
So Michael, first I want to thank you for your time. Your presentation was very well done. Michael, this is also Dustin, so we know each other. For the gold industry, through the gold industry, is when you threw up the Utah dollar, that I recognized the connection. So how you doing again, Mike?
I don't see your
So
camera, so I
anyway.
can't match a face with the name, but it's nice to meet you.
Here, I'll go back up on camera. Hey, Mike, how you doing?
Oh, Kiota. Yeah. Got it.
Hey, how you doing? All
really
right.
good.
So, yeah, Your Majesty, I know Michael. He's done a tremendous amount of work around this coin and the new currency that he's been trying to build, this whole program. So, Mike, what I'd really like to do with Your Majesty's permission is to have a follow-up with our IT team and try to see how we can plug and play, because and Mike, I'd love to be able to get the presentation so we can actually review the whole thing. That way we can kind of get a little bit more of a glimpse of what you have on the committee.
I'll actually post a recording for you, and then, if you want it, you can have it. If you don't, I can pull it down. But so.
Okay, so that's wonderful. But yeah, I'd like to be able to have a IT call that goes into more detail into the background, how we can have the interconnections with some of the people that actually know the programming side of it. We're more of the lay side of the group, where we do have people that are very specific into this industry, and let's see how we can create the best possible program for the kingdom that we can together.
Aloha.
well, thank you, you both. I really appreciate your mana'o. Michael, I would like to have you come back again and to continue. I'm sorry, I need the rest of the time to get to kingdom business.
Mm-hmm. Do you want me-
Lamaku, I'll give you 2 seconds.
Do you want me to log out?
No, you're
Okay.
welcome to stay.
Okay.
You're welcome to stay. Okay, Lamaku, please.
Thank you, Your Majesty, and aloha, Your Majesty, and to all members. I want to first say thank you for the excellent presentation. And I thank you, Your Majesty, for signaling that we need to harness the special time. I have to tell you that there's a number of concerns here. First of all, the word Hawaiian means nothing. Ikaolelo na kiola. Ikaolelo is the other. I am not swept away with this discussion. I listened to what Barbara has to say. I think that has a lot of merit. There's principles involved here. I think while this is a fascinating expression and presentation, it needs far more leadership. And I think you, Your Majesty, can provide it, and others here. That's what I wish to say, because I'm not impressed with it. There's a word called wisdom that only a Kua can provide. And only those who there are lots of people who have philosophies, but the work that the kingdom's head, our king, has done is the walk and the talk of Akua. That's why Akua has named him as the leader of the kingdom of Hawaii, not the Hawaiian kingdom. I'm not a Californian. I am not a Hawaiian. I am Oiwi. There's a lot to be said about this, because our families, our precious families, are looking for the unity hub of God And our people provide it because we are the firstborn of Akua. I couple this, I stand for it, and I ask us to be far more inspecting of this. While I appreciate heavily the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Migala, Lamako. I appreciate your aloha. And I'm sorry, is your individual still here? Aquino, is he still around?
Your Majesty, it looks like it can be happening at another time if it's convenient for it just so happened he had a very, very important call and appointment. So he apologizes. He had to leave, but he can do it another time.
Okay, that'd be wonderful. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Thank you again, Michael, for your presentation. And
it was excellent. It was excellent.
Yes, what Maku is sharing is that for the Hawaiians, for the people, the EVs, as she mentioned, and Charles can appreciate this as well as Auntie Victoria. The EVs are the descendants of the ancestors who passed away. And the EVs are the bones of the essence that we carry within our DNA. And that is dear to all of us who are firstborn of this nation. And so it's important that all of you understand this because it is reflective of who we are as people. And this from generations before our birth. As far as the presentation, I love the presentation. I appreciate the mana'o and the due diligence that you've taken to bring it to this point. We do have a few minutes. What I want to discuss with you, if you can, is a part of the things that I want to do eventually is to create our own government identification for our people. Driver's license, that type of thing. Do you have any thoughts on this, Michael?
Yeah, I believe that taking that simple step can actually free humanity, not only whatever you want to define the kingdom as, because those are words. And like I said before, we have to nail that correctly. And it hasn't been. That's just been my observation. And I don't think it's right, but I think within a matter of a day, we can tune it. And so that concern that was just voiced is real, and it has to be attuned correctly. But once it's done correctly and alignment is had, the feelings and passion and emotion that was just experienced can actually get aligned in the right direction to actually start giving identity back to the individuals, to the people that actually care about the family unit. Because really what's happening when you strip the individual from their identity, you're also stripping the family from its natural rights to govern itself. And so I really feel that your thought process around whether it's driver's license or identity cards or passports or registration or licenses,
all the above.
Yeah, there is nothing stopping you from standing up and literally doing it right, doing it better than the existing system. The existing system is a joke. I mean, the inefficiencies. Have you ever tried to go renew a driver's license? I mean, it's like,
yes.
How many times you got to set an appointment to go in to be rejected to have this? And it's like, well, where did you come up with that policy? Oh, well, they just printed this new one off. And oh, by the way, if you don't have one of these new identities by May of next year, you won't be able to go into a government building. And then there's going to be, like, I met with some other Leon Su, and he's like, that's a human rights violation. That's why people are on the street, because they can't get a bank account because they can't get an ID. Like, you won't be able to go into banks without having, because a bank is a governmental institution in May of next year. So doing that now with a sense of urgency is imperative, because once you do it,
I agree.
And if you do it cryptographically, you will leapfrog over the existing system into what people are calling the QFS system. And that will enable not only identity, but financial systems and land management systems and dispute management systems to all be rebuilt for the future, for the new millennium.
Well, we do have a very talented people in this forum, and they're wise. A lot of them are wiser than me, and they're pretty smart. So we can gravitate to all of that quite quickly. And people and those on the panel here are very passionate about Hawaii. They love Hawaii, and since 2002. I've traveled and spoken about the wrongs committed against us and against those leaders who were falsely accused and sent to prison to discredit them. And those people who have been through the muck and mire, I applaud them because they never gave up on the greater good. And that greater good goes back to Akua, who is God. And that for me is worthy of mention. The identification, et cetera, and doing it right. One is the passports, diplomatic passports, normal passports, identity that identifies who we are as Iwi Kanakas. Iwi Kanakas, the bones of our ancestors, and who we are as a people. I don't believe that there are many indigenous nations that have gotten that far. But let us be the one that lead the way. So I look for your guidance, Michael, in all of this.
I am here to serve and not to cause conflict, but maybe to bring unity where it couldn't have been brought before, but technology that is not ours, and when we really understand the technology and the data, today we may be doing it on memory devices or on CDs or on floppies, but in the future, it will be the bones, it will be the DNA, it will be the blood. We, us, the blood that flows through all of us is the same. And when the sooner we realize that and love one another, we can see that these types of systems can unify us. It doesn't matter if it says Hawaiian versus Hawaii. We know what it is. And it is not enslaved or controlled or demeaned or separated or killed. So
thank you. Lamaku.
Your Majesty, going back to some of the discussions, Princess Pule, Leali'i, that discussion we had about some of the problems of our youth. There are problems of youth everywhere, especially in developed countries. And I want to say that God has said to me, for us all, that colonization is a malady that needs God. We can't heal it. Our programs help, but we cannot heal colonization. God has to heal the soul. And in my experience, when I've talked to our people of the Pacific, many of these on discussions that are as knowledgeable, no, not as knowledgeable as Mr. Proper. I'm sure you're in a class on your own, but, and I appreciate fully, but what they show me is the malady of their heart makes them be identified by me as colonized. They are speaking, they are whip them on the machines, but they do not have the bit of the beginning of the Hawaiian heart by God. It's not a quick fix, and you cannot sit down and get it easily. Modern mind and modern man says that we can. I want to go even further and say that these machines are all here for us because we came from our ability as human beings or manifestations of great God. But there's a word that God teaches us, and that's wisdom. And that's what I stand for here. And that's all I want to say. Thank you for giving me a moment. Because no matter how wonderful it sounds, there's a whole lot that needs to be brought in by speakers and wisdom like on our House of Nobles and this group right here.
Thank you. Mahalo. Do anyone have any questions before we have a closing prayer?
Well, first of all, I would like to say something. I really appreciate what Michael said. In fact, I took a lot of notes because I thought what he said was really profound. But the one thing that comes to my mind is that what he presented to me, I don't know about anybody else, but it's very simple. It's not complicated. I think once we go and listen to his presentation online, I think the Hawaiian people are very simple people. They don't like complicity. They don't like to get so stressed out about it. They're very island. So if we can make the program that I was following very in detail when he was talking, I thought, oh, I can do that. Oh, that's pretty cool. Oh, that's interesting. Oh, yeah, this. I found myself immersed in the conversation.
Hey, Calamine, hold on.
I,
Introduce yourself so that Michael and Charles know who you are.
oh, I'm his sister. I'm his youngest and not the cutest sister, but I'm his sister. He has two more sitting next to him right now that they're listening to the conversation as well. But I've been very involved in listening to what's been presented, and the feelings is amazing. But for me, I am very simple. I don't like a lot of complications. But if I could follow this in my lack of technology and my lack, I love the fact that I can do things without having people to know who I am really. I don't know how to explain it, but I kind of really was following everything. In fact, I ran out of paper because I was writing so small because I was taking so many notes. But I wanted to thank him too as well, because like I said, I grew from something that I really appreciate, because this world is quite interesting. We've got to go into real time now. We can't rely on, what we hear from others. We have to take action for ourselves.
Thank you, sis. That's my sister Kool-Aid, second to the youngest. And she was born on New Year's, and she always reminds us that she's a New Year baby, so that when we have our New Year parties, she wants to make sure that we understand it's her party too.
Well, the world celebrates my birthday, but nobody invites the birthday girl. Kidding. Kidding.
The truth. Does anyone have any other questions?
I would just have one more suggestion, Michael. So one of the things that I would probably have a focus on is how this system can create a voting system to have the voice of the people be heard. Because one of the main things, especially in Hawaii, is they're not heard. They're fighting for their own government right now, and they're not heard. We're fighting to create that awareness around the world, and His Majesty has just done an amazing job. But I think that, the more that the people see that they have a voice, the more that they learn that they have a voice, the more that they're going to be attracted to it.
I agree. And I do need to be out there more as the voice of and for the people. I have Anti-Victoria. We talk about that often. And for many, many years, I have heard the voices of our people. And each step I've made was because I've heard the voices of our people, to ensure that we can have a strong foundation based on the very simple needs, as my sister put out, education, food, sustenance, and everything else that's required for a nation to move forward. But yes, thank you. Yes, Lamaku.
Thank you, Your Majesty. Mr. Proper, I am Lamaku Mikahala Roy. Lamaku is the title God has given me. I am the first of the modern era of Oiwi. My history comes straight from heaven, and it will go to our people first, and then to all of mankind who will listen or want to learn. This is a big matter because my own people don't hear the true history that's coming from heaven. They judge it. They are colonized because of another life way that they've been raised by. And it's not something you can take a pill for and get rid of. I am a teacher. I spend my time trying to talk about this kind of thing, but you cannot talk about it in 10 minutes. You have to live with a person to understand a difference of lifestyle and orientation of heart done by the heart, done by the living way. So this is who I am, and this is my walk. Sharing with the King and the kingdom. This is the matter that God wants. And so this that you're discussing is fine information, but it needs to be put into the fullness of understanding of life as we are talking as the unit here. So thanks again for hearing that. Because right now, my own people, they judge, they don't listen, they think it's strange. And the only way I see to talk it through is to take more time, that precious thing called time, and not being a quick fix by just going to this program or that. That's a modern day matter. And so when I speak, I also trust it's from Akua. Thank you very much, Your Majesty. Thank you all.
Hello. Charles, it's so nice to see you again. And I'll be talking to both you and Michael separately. Are there any other questions anybody have? Mark, do you have any questions?
Well, I don't have any questions, but I do want to comment. Michael, I'm Mark Williams. I'm going to tell you, your presentation was awesome. I loved it. It's right in line with what I'm doing. I actually work with the IOBD, and I'm part of the USA desk for the world. And the QFS system, the RTGS, real-time gross settlement system, blockchain technology, all those things you've been talking about are being integrated right now. And to be positive about this, it is a good direction where we're heading. And with the new technologies and so forth, it's going to make the world a lot better and a lot safer. It's going to make banking much safer for all of us individually, because realistically, what you were saying, we're going to have we're going to be in charge of our own banking system, whether it's on our phone or whether it's on a computer or laptop, whatever. But what I'm saying is, my phone's about to go dead, sorry. I just want you to know everything you said is correct. And that's the way the world is heading right now. Not in a bad way, it's happening in a good way. You know, if you take the satanic way, the way the world wanted it, let's say the BRICS countries, okay? They wanted to have a one world government and a one world currency. That's not what we're doing. Right. Well, what we're doing and where it's headed to is that each country and each state, let's take Hawaii, for instance. Yes, the Hawaiian dollar, I totally agree with that, because you should have your own currency. You should have your own asset-backed currency. You should have your own government. You should have your own sovereignty. And that's the way every country in the world, we're heading that way. So everybody has their own identity. And so we're not going to the one world government. We're not going to the one world currency. We're now at the point where we're creating individuality and sovereignty for all. And that's what the purpose is. As our group here, this Council of Nobles, we are here to serve humanity. The King, His Majesty, is doing a fantastic job in leadership. And this is what he's developing, is sovereignty and individuality in their country. And I just wanted to know, I thought the call was amazing. I thought it was great. Thank you, Your Majesty, for bringing Michael on. I would also like to be a part of this as well when they're talking about how you want to plan and go forward. I love what you're doing. I applaud you. Thank you so much. I'll be involved with, would like to be involved with Michael, Dustin, Amy, everybody on the IT department. But this is great. It was very enlightening. I even learned a lot of things from what Michael was saying. So thank you, Michael. You did a fantastic job. I applaud everyone on this call. Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll be creating 4 different divisions, and one of them was the IT, etc. divisions within the kingdom. But Michael, you had a question?
I didn't have a question. I had a comment that's really important to understand. This is not me. I am like you, just a servant that does my best every day to be in the right spirit, to listen to the voice, to act. I have piles and piles of these books, like piles of them from decades and decades. of listening and writing and doing. And it's usually in the small, simple voices and quiet times. And it doesn't always work. Like if I'm not doing the right things in my life, it doesn't work. And I think that's the real point, that woman, that amazing woman, she's spot on. But the key is, this isn't to be forced on everyone. It's to be as an alternative choice so that people can have another path. That's it. But it's not me. I am just like those that care to connect to Akua and understand that we're spirits in these physical bodies, and every day in these physical bodies matter. That's it.
Mike, thank you. And
Second on that.
and fourth on that. And Lamaku and everybody, we understand. Charles, is there something you'd like to say?
It's a short blurb. When I first met Michael 6 months ago, just literally right after the Lahaina fires, every Kanaka knows this conversation I'm about to say. So many people come and when I was in Lahaina, because that's right where my mother's house got burned down. When I was in Lahaina, so many organizations came over to help, and some did a very good job, and they're gone. As Kanaka, we've seen that. Hey, I get a good idea. Hey, I get a good idea. They're gone. So when I first met Michael, I introduced him to Kamau, and I was trying to find Auntie Vicky as well. And I did not take lightly when I brought up to Kamau, we need to hire this boy, because as Hanai, he now has the Kanaka privilege that comes on with it. I fully understand that, to put him into my Moku How, from Kekalike all the way down to me. And I Hanai is brought up because of what I saw in his heart and what I saw him doing physically, and the anguish that he was going through, trying to say, how can I share this out with anybody? Nobody wanted to listen to him. Some people did, but very few. You have, Your Majesty, and so thank you very much for that. And Tiviki, you did as well. So from a Kanaka perspective, I did not do the Hanai immediately. I watched him for 6 months and trying to watch what he was doing, like, what are you talking about? And watching the huge amount of books of notes, sister, that he has, you wouldn't believe. I've seen him. Crazy. So mahalo.
His pu'uvai is good. His pu'uvai is good. I want to say thank you again. The one thing about our forum here at House of Nobles is everyone has a right to speak the truth, their truth. And we listen. And we never criticize, because in doing so, we criticize the spirit within ourselves. And it's important that we have an open mind as we move forward. Healing the hurts of the past is first healing the hurts within ourselves. And healing the self is the greatest value that we have. And that's how we become honor in all things that we do. But thank you everyone again for today. Michael and Charles, shortly after we close, I will be contacting you folks individually to speak with you. Before we have closing prayer, Charles, you said something about people come, they do this, they're gone, this and that. Well, I have the honored privilege of speaking about Dustin. I love this guy. Amy, and I love her dearly. Barbara, and Mike, Mark, and these two people were the first to respond to the Lahaina problem. When we spoke, the only things they said is, what can we do? And I told them, Dustin said, I have a group of people I'm going to call right now. And he did. And we had supplies flying from California and elsewhere to the Hawaiian Islands. We also had a woman with her own ship to bring food if the airplanes were unavailable. And these people that Dustin and Amy brought to us is unbelievable. And Barbara and all the work that they did. So I just love these people dearly. And they never asked for anything. except to serve and to be part of a greater good. And as I have spoken in different parts of the world about peace and reconciliation and how we must come together as a human family, I want to say that it begins only with us, how we conduct ourselves. As I said, my voice is yours, as your voice is mine. What you say, I say, and vice versa. And that's called trust. Our trust that we speak of me and Hawaiian Kingdom and our people, it's done with honesty, love, and integrity. And that's very important. So thank you all. And I'm going to now call Auntie Victoria to give closing prayer. She'll puli for us. And when we say puli kako, that means we all bow our head, puli kako, and Auntie will chant in prayer. Aloha. Auntie?
Mahalo, Your Majesty. Mahalo. Mahalo, everyone, for attending. And all these things that has been placed before us comes from Akua. These people that come and connect with us, they are from Akua. If not, they will not have been before us this day. And we have to believe and have faith in one another. And the things that Akua comes and brings to us and gives to us may not be in clarity where, because myself, I come from the old days and the old ways. I have learned to accept the new things in life because it is of Akua. And that is what my heart brings. With this, we call upon Io. Io, the voice of our King, the voice of our people. Io, that takes the words from our heart to our Heavenly Father. And with that, ku e manue. Ke alua kunei ka puleia kalau. Ulia kalania, ulia namuia nawe. Ka nehi luna, ka nehi lalo. Ka kau, ka hema, upakani hai kalani. E kili ka italani. Kauila nui ma ke hai italani. Panei talani e ola ke kanaka. O mai ka loea, ka mana, ka ike, na I ka hunuala. O ka uila, e ke akua. Mama wanua. E kalamai. I'd like to express the meaning of this pule. E. It helps us to bring all our knowledge and wisdom into one space, and that is Akua space. For without his guidance, we would not have the knowledge and the wisdom to do the things that are pleasing unto thee, unto our Heavenly Father. May everyone have a blessed day, and may Akua guide us in all that we do to rise our kingdom for our people. Amama Uanoa. Well, Your Majesty.
See, you're on mute.
Oh, itala my phone giving me. That's why this phone I get is junk.
The king's on mute. You were fine, Auntie.
Hello, everybody. Again, thank you. And in 2 weeks, we're having our other meeting, and I'll have Michael, Sam, if they're available, to be here as well. Hello, everybody. God bless you all.
Hi, Your Majesty.
Aloha.
Bless everybody.